of Waukesha. Meeting is called to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd stand and join me, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Fisher?
Here.
Supervisor Radke?
Here.
Supervisor German?
Here.
Supervisor Durr?
Here.
Supervisor Stigler?
Here. Thank you. And we are looking for confirmation that we have complied with the law in terms of notification of the meeting.
Yes, we have.
Okay, thank you. Next item, citizens' comments. If anybody would like to address the board, please come forward, state your name and address, and share with us what you've got to say. Everybody's bashful or nobody's going to speak, huh? Okay. We'll move on, thank you. Then item 6, we have a series of reports. First report from Administrator Clerk Treasurer Nicholas, please.
So we have been making the changes that are needed with the new board in the office. I've met with Gordon Flesh to go over our quarterly reports on how our equipment is doing. We found out that we have computers that will need some upgrading by January because we are still running Windows 7 and Microsoft is no longer going to be patching Windows 7. So we'll be making those changes or putting that information in the next upcoming budget so we can make that change in January. We have in front of you, I have a policy for noncompliance for you to review, so then we understand the process. So if we have a resident that has a complaint, they are to fill out a complaint form or suggestion form. We have that online underneath the resident area, a resident tab, and they can fill that out. As soon as it's sent in, as soon as they submit it, it comes to my email account. I give that copy to the chairman. The chairman signs off on it if he deems it to be a viable complaint, and then we send it to the building inspector. At that time, the building inspector goes over and inspects the property and finds out if that property is actually in noncompliance. And if it is, then my office writes a letter to the property owner to make them aware that they are in noncompliance and what they're in noncompliance for. They have 30 days to make that, get their property in compliance. If they cannot, the letter states that if they make substantial movement toward compliance, that they are able to come to the board and ask for an extension as long as it's within that first 30 days. If they do not get in compliance and we do another inspection and they're not in compliance, they haven't come to the board for an extension, then a citation is given to sent to the sheriff's office, and then the sheriff, we give them a letter on what's out of compliance for the citation, and then the sheriff's department goes ahead and writes the citation and delivers it. If a resident decides that they do not want to they want to be anonymous, our policy does allow the resident to contact one of our board members. That board member can make the decision if they want to be the person that fills out the compliance or non-compliance or complaint form. And then the same process goes through. So once the person is in, if they get a citation and they go to court, there is nothing that the board can do after that point. But once the property is in compliance, then the attorney contacts my office, we then go into a closed session with the town board to discuss the property's fine, and, or not. So, I wanted to kind of give you all an update on the compliance procedures. They were approved by the board in 15, I believe, and there are a few changes that could be made if the board desires, but I wanted to just let you know what that policy is. So if you get a call about a complaint, it may be that the person does not want to state their name, and it's going to be up to you to make the decision if you want to move it forward. We also received a letter from Sweetball. Sweetball has been our vendor of choice for our sweeping of our roads. For the last 5 years that I know, they've been doing our job that needs to be done for our conservation areas. Those are the things that are, whenever there's a grate, we have to do that once a year, and they've been doing that for us. They have, this year, they have sent us a letter, and I want to just quick read that. In the German family, Sweetball believe very strongly in the town of Waukesha. The town roads need to be swept due to sand being used this winter, and that is true. Sweetball is offering to sweep the town roads for the 2019 spring season at no charge to the town of Waukesha. This will save the taxpayers approximately $6,000 to $7,000. We ask that the town supply a truck and a driver, DPW driver, so we may dump the sweepings, and the town is to dispose of the material. If this is acceptable, we would let them know. So this is the vendor that we've had of choice for the last 5 years. I wanted to bring it to your attention of the offer. And that's my report for today.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Administrator Clerk Treasurer Nicholas? Yes.
Is there some action that need to be taken with the sweep hall offer, or does we just gonna automatically accept something like that, or what?
Okay, good question. I guess that's kind of the pleasure of the board. Would you like to take a formal action on that? I think that would be fine.
You can't. You
We
can't, it's
wouldn't
not
be
on
able
the
to do it
agenda.
tonight.
What's that?
We can't do it tonight. We don't have it on the agenda.
Fair enough. But you're anxious to move ahead with that, I think, correct?
It is. DPW will give us a list of the roads that need some sweeping, and then we can move forward. Normally, I don't bring this to the board, but
Understood.
it was, because it's usually under a $5,000 mark, and we've been using them. Their quote came in much lower. They've been giving us a cut rate as a town resident and town business for the last few years. I brought it to the board this time, one, because we have a board member, and we wanted to make it very clear that we're doing this up front for our residents.
Okay. Seems to me like probably the appropriate action would be to say thank you and move on.
It's fine, I just wanted to make sure that that was handled the proper way, because it is that time of the year now, and the
Understood?
streets need to be swept, you know?
Yep. I mean, is everybody comfortable simply saying thank you and proceed? Okay, then we'll move on. Second report, DPW, Director Jerry Noley. You're getting to be a real regular hero here, aren't you, with your reports?
Good evening.
Good evening.
In April, we helped the clerk's office with the spring election. We began sign work, replacing street signs that we had ordered. We replaced worn, faded road signs, straighten up leaning and bent signs. We started working on tree work on Getz Drive because we're gonna pave that road this year. We removed a number of large cottonwood trees to get them out of there. We have to have the stumps ground and whatever. We worked on some road patching. Hot mix isn't available yet. It is now. So we've been using cold patch. road patching is a lot more effective when we use hot mix. We took care of all our plow damage, repaired damaged in mailboxes, worked on vehicles and equipment. We started on culvert installations. We did 4 this week. And that was basically April. May, we got some more culverts to put in. We're gonna complete our 2019 road evaluation. You know, at that time, we'll be able to have a better idea of what roads need to be swept. And that's for our crack filling, slag, and whatnot. Responded to job orders. We're gonna work on some more road patching. We've got a ton of tree and brush work to do, grounds maintenance, and, you know, take care of our vehicles, and that's basically my report.
Are you here to assure us you're done with snow plowing for the year?
No.
You're not gonna give us that guarantee?
They got a little something coming for us, I believe, on Saturday, so I don't know what's gonna happen. But
Okay. Anybody have questions of Jerry for his report? Sure, go ahead.
So Jerry had made a very quick mention about his work on him and his department, the work that they did on Getz Drive, and I just wanted to thank him for that work. It saved the taxpayers about $5,000. We had an estimate a couple years ago to do that work with those very large trees, and his department worked very hard to get those down, and that really saved us a lot of money, and I wanted to thank him and his department.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from anybody?
yeah, we didn't know what we were gonna do with the wood. I mean, these were huge trees, so we piled all the wood. We thought we'd have to haul it back here. I went there 2 days later, the wood's gone.
Well, there you go.
I don't know who took it.
All right.
One other thing I'd like to, if I can, this might not be the time or place, and I know in the latter part of your agenda, you're gonna be talking about different things that are needed in the town, you know, buildings, fire department, and whatever. We requested and it was approved, a public works building to house our trucks and whatnot. Where do we go with that? I understand there was some glitches in the bidding process and whatever. Are we moving forward with that? Are we letting it lay, or?
Well, I think that's a decision for the board to resurrect that discussion.
Okay. And you know what, and I know our capital plan originally was set up where a salt shed was supposed to be first. I know the fire department has some serious needs. And then it was the DPW building. We kind of got off track.
Sure.
At one point or another, salt is not going to be available at the county. Where that's not a forever thing. And if they say you're not going to have salt, we need to be prepared.
I appreciate your calling our attention to that. We got work to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next report, Fire Department, Chief Buchholz, please.
March actually was a pretty quiet month for us. We had 29 ambulance requests, 1 motor vehicle accident, and that's supposed to be 9 fire responses, not 69. We gave mutual aid 5 times, and we received mutual aid 5 times. Those 5 times were all for paramedic, part of our paramedic program. One of our high school cadets left the program, so we're at 3 high school cadets. We have 34 active members, and the secretary treasurer, 3 people are on leave of absence. All the EMT basics finished refresher classes, so they're all up to speed, and the 2019 fire inspections continue.
Okay, any questions of Chief Buchholz? Thank you for your report. Next item is the Sheriff's Department report. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm looking at 10 people in the audience. None of you look like the Sheriff's Department. Am I right on with that? Okay, we've got a written report there with March statistics. Nobody here to speak to that. Are there any questions that anybody's got for that could be followed up on a later date? Then I guess we'll just accept that as presented. Next item, 7 minutes for the meeting of March 28th, 2019. And Kathy, maybe you could help clarify that. Looking at that, there were but 3 members present. I think Chairman Merrick, Supervisor Durr, and I, Supervisors Wolf and Radke, were absent.
Chairman?
Is that correct?
Chairman, we had, this was left on the agenda. We had approved that. Normally, we
Oh.
approve the minutes from the previous town board meeting on this town board meeting agenda. Because of the end of the term, I had moved the March 28th minutes for approval on the April 11th, so we do
Okay.
not need to make any movement at that.
Good reminder, so already done with that. Thank you for picking that up. Item 8 has a whole bunch of subpoints underneath it. 8A, I'll read the agenda item for discussion and possible action, is to transfer cash from general fund to capital fund to follow the fund balance policy, which states that we are to maintain a balance of at least 25%, but no more than 40% of the ensuing year's budgeted expenditures. This move would work to stay consistent with the general fund balance policy. Transfer amount to be considered would be a minimum of $235, which would leave us with a residual balance of 40% of the ensuing year's budget expenditures, or a maximum transfer of $645,674, which would leave us with a balance of 25% of the ensuing year's budgeted expenditure. Just quickly, a little bit of explanation on that. We do have a policy, it's called a policy for managing a fund balance in the general fund, which was passed by the town board on July 23rd, 2015. So that's a little shy of 4 years old. That's stated in the agenda item there pretty closely, and the concept is simply that we were advised by town attorney and by town auditor that we ought to adopt a policy for how much money to keep in the general fund, which is one of 2 major funds. Sometimes I think we call that the operating fund, and the rest of it should go to a capital fund, and we've got a capital plan that looks forward for how to expend those funds. So right now, the policy parameters are that we keep no more than 40% of the ensuing year's budget, which is loosely $2.5 million thereabouts. I mean, 40% of that is roughly $1 million in very round numbers. We keep a minimum of 25% of that, which would be like $625,000. So we cannot change the policy tonight, but we can have the discussion on the amount of money to transfer anywhere within that range. My personal preference would be the 40%, but we need to have a discussion about that at the board level. And just even one last thing, this is an annual event, typically happens about this time of year, and the good news is this is reflective of the fact that the town ran in the black last year, otherwise we wouldn't have the opportunity to do this. So at that point in time, I'll open that up for a discussion of the town board. What's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to transfer $450,000 for the appropriate level.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Proceed to discuss.
Well, I thought the direction that you gave is that we can't make a decision on it today, but it's just for discussion.
No, let me clarify that. We can work within the parameters of that, and if you do the math, I don't know whether you did that, Mike, I mean, the $50,000 transfer that is not quite but loosely halfway between that. What is that, something around
I didn't calculate it.
30% or something?
I didn't calculate it.
Okay, but we can work within that range. We simply can't go above the 40%, which would be transferring less than the 252, 135. We can't go below the 25%, which would be transferring the 645, 674. So his motion keeps us within that range.
My question is, if we run short on funds during that time period, is there, ordinance allow us to transfer more money later on, or are we stuck with that permanently?
Question, running short on the operating
Right.
side of it, so whether we could transfer back, is that the question from the capital fund?
Yes.
Do you know the answer to that question?
You are always able to transfer between funds, but this is a surplus. We have the funds for our budget already that we collected from tax revenue. This is our fund balance that is beyond that. We're either 40% beyond what we need, 40% of our budget beyond what we need, so. But yes, you can go back and forth as many times as you'd like.
This is incredibly crude, but I think, and your motion was for 450. I think loosely that would leave us 800,000, a little bit north of $800,000 of reserve in the operating fund or general fund. Does that sound about right?
Yes, about that.
Okay. Other discussion, questions? Ready, if you're ready to vote, the motion then was to transfer $450,000 from the general fund to the capital fund, and the motion was made by Supervisor Durr and seconded by Supervisor Radke. Everybody understands the motion? Then all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 8B is to initiate a petition to repeal all conditional uses in the town code, schedule a public hearing, and prepare an ordinance to repeal for possible action at the May 9th, 2019 Joint Plan Commission and Town Board meetings. A little bit of background information on that. Our town zoning code awfully simplistically provides under a variety of different zoning categories, residential and business zoning, institutional zoning and the like, identifies permitted uses, and it identifies in many of those categories conditional uses. I submit that a lot of that has not significantly been changed for decades, so it's been there many, many years. What we've bumped up against recently is, and often discussed in the room here, is Wisconsin Act 67, which some folks have referred to as a landowner's bill of rights or property owner's bill of rights. We have, board members have here copies of two letters which were drafted by Town Attorney John Macy. One is December 27th, 2017, consisting of some 7 pages, and a follow-up letter of August 21st, 2018, some 8 months or thereabouts later, 3 pages long. It's a pretty deep dive into the pool of explaining Wisconsin Act 67. These are available for anybody who would wish to see them. I mean, they're public records. I just picked off one thing here, and it's almost the last sentence in his letter of August 24th or 21st, 2018, in which Attorney Macy writes to us, if your local regulation intends for conditional uses to be a privilege, which I think is true in our case, conditional uses are now a right, and local ordinance changes are needed. So he kind of headed us in that direction. We haven't acted upon that. And what this would do if we were to act on this tonight with a favorable motion, Planner Malarkey would put together a list of all of these conditional uses that presently exist in our zoning code. A public hearing would be scheduled for the Joint Plan Commission Town Board meeting on May 9th. And again, that'd truly be a public hearing. And after that public hearing is closed, the town board could act on repealing those conditional uses. If that were to happen, looking downstream, this town board or future town boards could take any of those conditional uses and they could put them back into the town zoning code as permitted uses instead of conditional uses, or they could take and put them back in as conditional uses with further definition or description to them. So those options would be available downstream. I'll pause there for a minute with any questions or what or not that anybody might have or comments on what that's all about.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. So are you saying just the actual use code, or are you saying going backwards in time and taking those away from those that have been granted conditional uses?
No, good question. This, any existing conditional uses would stay in place. They'd be, and Attorney Macy confirmed this, they'd be considered legal non-conforming uses. So good question. Those would remain untouched. We don't even have a really good catalog of how many of those are out there. They're kind of on a piece-by-piece basis. I think the belief is most of those run with the land rather than the land ownership. There may be some changes on those, but those would remain intact.
Well, I guess my opinion would be I would not initiate a petition to repeal them yet. I would like to see what that list is from Mr. Malarkey before we just go ahead and do that and schedule a public hearing.
Well, it would be, as this is written, it would be all of the conditional uses.
I'd like to see a list of what those are before I just commit to initiating a petition to repeal them all.
Okay, well, they are, as they're listed in the zoning code. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just for one moment, before we start having debate and discussion, I think that there should, per our code, be a motion and a second on the table.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to initiate a petition to repeal all conditional uses in the town code, schedule a public hearing, and prepare an ordinance to repeal for possible action at the May 9th, 2019 Joint Plan Commission and Town Board meetings?
I so move.
Okay, so moved by Supervisor Stigler. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay,
Thank you.
then we'll continue with discussion. Anybody else? What's that? Yeah, if you wanna run through those basically, please do that.
Okay, I'll give you so our conditional uses are airports, helicopters, landing fields, and takeoff strips. Antique shops, gift shops, art studios, and similar uses. Automobile service and gas and convenience stations. Bed and breakfast establishments. Crematories, mausoleums for the burial of human remains. Commercial and residential ponds, fish and bait ponds. Commercial kennels and laboratories using animals or animal products. Commercial vehicle operation and parking. Communication structures such as radio, wireless communications. Drive-through lanes servicing food or beverages to customers. Fur farms, pig farms, pea vineries, creameries, condenseries. In-law suites, laboratory for testing, for experimental purposes, legal non-conforming uses, motels, multifamily units, off-street parking lots, outdoor theaters, public building and uses, quarries, recreational facilities, refuge disposal sites, residential plan unit developments, riding academies, stables, and paddocks, salvage yards, senior housing, uses for situations not specifically provided for under the conditional use section, any public water system as defined under state statute, event venues.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? I will.
And just so we're clear, what we're discussing is whether we would repeal those conditional uses, not conditional uses held by anybody to this point.
No, it would not affect any existing conditional uses. They would be deemed or considered legal non-conforming uses, so it would not affect anything that currently exists.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It's been spoken about moratoriums on conditional uses, and Attorney Macy had suggested instead of a moratorium for legal purposes, he'd prefer a repeal and then give the chance to come back with that ordinance to review all of the conditional uses. So that's, instead of the moratorium, we're looking at repeal.
Thank you. I am going to support the motion, and I think one of the reasons being this has been in discussion about this has been in play for almost a year and a half now, since December of 2017. We've had some discussion about this in various ways before. I mean, I think it is time to act on it. Again, this is simply to schedule this for a public hearing. That'll have to take place. There'll have to be opportunity for the public to be fully heard on the issue. If this does pass, I mean, there will be a very detailed presentation of that. There will be certainly ample opportunity for the board to decide if they want to embrace it or not and to what extent, but I'll support this because I think it's time to move on with it. Other comments from anyone?
Yeah, I think it's time also to do this since Act 67 wasn't, every other community that I've talked to has done this already. They started immediately after Act 67. Town of McWanago, Town of Delafield, Town of Merton have all gone ahead, and most of them are already done with it. So I think we're kind of behind the times. We need to react to this and get our ducks in a row, and it's time to do it.
Sure, go ahead.
Just one more thing I wanted to add. We do have some applications already in for future board meetings. So that this process that you're taking isn't going to stop that process. If they have an application on file before you make this decision to repeal and have that public hearing, then those will move forward to the board as usual.
Thank you. All right, further discussion? Well, then, since that we're prepared to vote, the motion as I understand it, which was made by Supervisor Stigler and seconded by Supervisor German, is to initiate a petition to repeal all conditional uses in the town code, schedule a public hearing, and prepare an ordinance to repeal for possible action at the May 9th, 2019 Joint Plan Commission and Town Board meetings. Assuming everyone understands the motion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Next item, try to move through here fairly quickly, but I am requesting that the board look at a little bit different approach to some things, and the suggestion is to meet as a committee of the whole, and Kathy's captured the essence of what that is in the agenda listing here, which I'll read, which is committee of the whole is an informal meeting of the board, commission, and staff to discuss specific items in an open and transparent manner. The meeting will be placed on the official YouTube site and minutes will not be taken. The concept on this would be, in some instances, it would just be the town board of 5 meetings, committee whole. In other instances, it would be the town board and the town plan commission meeting as a committee of the whole. Would contemplate, depending on the issues, that there would be staff members who would be present and participate. There may be some instances in which there might be some participation by public or other members, but I think that's likely to be limited. The idea of the committee of the whole is, again, as it's agendized here, minutes would not be taken. It would take place in this room. It would be on the town's YouTube site, so we'd have an audio and video recording. People would use microphones, and it would be a way to have an informal discussion. Typically, there'd be one topic per meeting. The tentative schedule in this is completely subject to change, but I think there's a lot of work to do. We could certainly look at reprioritizing things, but on the agenda there's a layout there from May 9th, 23rd, 13th, and the 27th of June, 11th and 25th of July, so that's looking some 3 months downstream roughly. There'd be one topic. Typically, these committee of the whole meetings would start at 6 o'clock. Envision that they would be done by 6:30, so we could start the regularly scheduled meeting on time. If they ran a bit long, occasions possibility. So if you look at those, the suggested topics for those on the 9th of May is consolidation of incoming overhead electrical service as an emergency generator. So we could have an informal discussion on that. That might be backstopped at that meeting with an action item, as would any of these be. May 23rd would be addition of the fire station. June 13th, communication with town residents, response to their concerns. June 27th, maintenance of town rights of way. July 11th, conditional uses that might be tempered or changed depending on what happens at the meeting on May 9th. And July 25th, 5-year capital plan. Some of these things would take the place of what we've done in the past as workshops for budget purposes and so forth. And again, the encouragement would be for the public to see that process. So I'll pause there if there's any comments or suggestions about that. Again, this is something that is flexible, a little bit of a new approach, certainly subject to change, but that's where I'd like to go on that. Anybody want to comment on that? There's no need to, but if anybody wants to speak to it, please do.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I have some scheduling conflicts to make it that early at 6 o'clock, so that'll be difficult.
Okay, are those routinely and regularly? I know we have public hearings typically begin at 6 o'clock. Are those problematic for you too?
Oftentimes, yes.
Okay, well, do you think you'd be able to join those hopefully sometimes before 6:30?
Some of the time I will, sure.
Okay.
I know it's gonna be a conflict, so I can't promise I'll be there.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I'm a little concerned, I mean, we can look at that. I'm a little bit concerned about pushing this back any further in time to get started. So appreciate and understand that. Is 6 o'clock problematic for anybody else?
Can we add to these also? Or could we?
Yeah, yes, my thought is initially is that a topic per time would be appropriate. I think some of these will consume that amount of time, but I mean, certainly open to suggestion if people would want to change order or sequencing or some of those. This is my initial vision, and I mean, we may want to change this along the way, but it was kind of a place to start.
I was thinking with the fire station also, the DPW, the earlier the better with the salt also.
Okay, okay. Point well taken. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm thinking the right of way, it's kind of late. It should almost be in the first part of June, be making some moves or actions on that.
We need to get all these things first on the list, don't we?
I know, and I'm thinking maybe I should do them all one month, in one night, you know.
It speaks to the urgency of something. I mean, I guess here's a thought. I mean, we're here for suggestion purposes. We have a lengthy agenda on the 9th of May, probably.
Yes, we do.
I mean, I'm open to suggestion. I guess we could do these things and to accommodate Supervisor Radke. I mean, we could do them after the formalized part of the meeting ends. I mean, that's another approach to it. My personal preference is not to try to schedule all kinds of extra meetings and so forth if we could avoid it, and I particularly want those to be here in public. But thoughts? Would we want to schedule them after the meeting? Do we want to try to double up on some of those and allocate a half hour apiece for each one? What are your thoughts?
I'm all in favor of doing them all one night. I mean, having multiple meetings during the week is hard to do too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, do we have any sense the meeting on the 9th, how long that might run? I know that's guesswork. It's a pretty full agenda.
It is. We're going to talk a little bit about the beginning of our smart growth plan and a process on that. And we have a conditional use. We've got a couple accessory structures. We've got the petition for repeal would be on there as well.
Okay. Which there'll be a public hearing for. I mean, how late are, and again, part of what we want to do is not only consider our availability, but that of the public as well. I mean, as a general principle, if we said finish the regular business and do these committee of the whole, and again, I suggest one topic at a time. I mean, are people willing to stay till 10 o'clock, or does that push on the other end, or what's thought does anybody have on length of an evening you want to spend here if we start at 6:30?
Well, you know past practice, Mr. Chairman, when we schedule these kind of meetings after a public hearing and plan commission, they go pretty late.
I get it, and that was my desire. I mean, I suppose we could do it another way. There's pros and cons to it. I mean, I suppose we could start these at 6:30 and no more than a half hour and start the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. That's going to push that downstream a little bit longer. I'm open to suggestions, but I'm not particularly fond of doing these on set-aside evenings. I mean, I guess we could do that, but I know there's a lot of, I think, citizen interest in at least attending and listening to these. So, thoughts? What's the best way to go about doing this? It doesn't mean we can't change along the way. I mean, we can certainly do that. Do you have any idea, Jim, whether you'd have a conflict on the 9th of May for 6 o'clock?
It's just very difficult to be here by 6. I mean, that's
Okay,
part of the reason I couldn't make it to plan commission meetings when they were at 6.
okay.
And budget meetings, it's just tough. It's hard to say from day to day. I would be more in favor of having them start at 6:30.
Okay. And basically, finished or not, cut it off by 7 o'clock. Is that your thought?
Yep. You'd have to cut it off in a half hour if you started at 6 on town board
I
meeting
think
anyway.
appropriately so. I mean, run 5 minutes long or something might be one thing, but we're not gonna go an hour or whatnot and do that. Any thought about that? Again, we could change it if we were to start with the first one at May 9th, and I know that's gonna be a longer evening, but at 6:30, and move it along and have the Joint Plan Commission Town Board meeting start at 7. Kathy, you have any thoughts or recommendation about that?
It's your decision, your board's decision. I'm here, no matter what time you start.
Anybody else?
I got no preference. I mean, 6:30 is fine. I don't care.
Okay. Accommodate Jim. Well, then why don't we start? We can change that. Let's start with the first one at 6:30 on May 9th, and we'll try to see if we can make some forward progress on the electrical service and emergency generator. Okay. I don't think we need a formal action on that, do we? Is that satisfactory to everybody? Okay, all right, then moving on, we'll see how quick we can get through some of this. Number of appointments, Fire Commission appointment under item D there. Appointment of Fire Commission member per Wisconsin State Statute 62.13, parens 1, close parens for 5-year term. Term ends April 30th, 2024. I'd like to push that down stream to either May 9th or May 23rd. I don't think there's requirement for formal action on that unless you want to do it. We'll just move that downstream. I think it would be appropriate at this point in time, if you look at item E on the agenda there, it's notice accept the resignation of Bob Stigler from the Fire Commission. I know you made I believe a simple written statement on that. Do you want to just verbalize that for people?
No, I just decided to resign. As becoming a board member, my feeling, and I've said that many times before this, when I got on, that I believe that as a town board member, it should be a citizen representation, not the board. So that's why I feel as though I need to resign and let one of the citizens take my place.
Right. I don't know.
I've been a firm backer of the fire department, but I mean, I need to not be a hypocrite and stick around after I've made that statement, so.
Okay, all right. I don't think we have to take a formal action on that, and I believe your term has a couple of years to run yet, if I'm not correct. So then we will be looking at 2 appointments to the Fire Commission. Those are 5-year terms, and they're sequenced, they're staggered, so one of those rolls over each year. So we'll find someone to fill out the rest of your term. Okay, then we need, under item F, is an appointment. It was noticed as an appointment by the Town Board of Fire Commission member per Wisconsin Stat 62.13, parens 1, close parens for remainder of Bob Stigler's term, and therein it indicates that term ends April 30th, 2022, so it'll effectively be a 3-year appointment we'll deal with either on May 9th or May 23rd. Plan Commission appointments.
For item D, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I can ask, whose term was expiring?
I'm sorry, so for item D? Yes, Brian Webb.
Thank you.
Sure. Then the next part is Plan Commission appointments. G is accept the resignation of Bob Stigler as a citizen member of the Plan Commission. I mean, I think that goes without saying that you're no longer a citizen member because you're a member of the town board. So that's the same thing. Then item next H is appointment of a supervisor to sit on the Plan Commission, which is made by 2/3 of the town board per the town code 2-82 B1. Just a quick explanation. The Plan Commission by ordinance is comprised of the town chairperson, 1 member of the 4 town board supervisors, which we're talking about here, elected by 2/3 of the board, and then there are the 5 citizen members. So at this point in time, we need to appoint a member of the town board and approve it by 2/3 of the board here to serve as a Plan Commission supervisor. I'd like to suggest that Supervisor Stigler would be a good fit for that, given that he had or has had 5 or 6 years as a citizen member of the Plan Commission. So that would be my suggestion. Open it up to the rest of you for other suggestions. I'll put that into the form of a motion then to appoint Supervisor Stigler to sit on the Plan Commission as the board designee, and also move. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, I made the motion, seconded by Supervisor Radke. Any discussion?
I have concerns with this appointment, Mr. Chairman. It ties back to the actions and the statements that were taken by, at the time, Commissioner Stigler surrounding Lilac Acres and his concern that he wouldn't be able to support laws that he didn't agree with and his actions to take a seat in the audience and not participate in the discussion and the vote. I think it's an important function of plan commissioners and supervisors for that matter, but in this case, plan commissioners, that we don't get to just pick and choose things that we're going to enforce. We look for plan commissioners that will enforce the ordinances that we have in our code, and to do so evenly and fairly and justly. And I have taken, as a town board supervisor, any number of very, very difficult votes in my 5 years on the board, and never have I seen it my place as a supervisor, nor would I be able to support anyone involved in the town, whether it be planning commissioner or supervisor, that would have a position that they can't support laws that they don't agree with. I just don't see that as a function of a commissioner, and that's why I wouldn't be able to support Supervisor Stickler in this position.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Dorr. Anybody else? Okay, then the motion, which I made, which was seconded, I believe, by Supervisor Radke, to appoint Supervisor Stigler to the Plan Commission as a designee from the town board. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Did you vote in favor?
Yes, sorry, I was.
Okay, then the vote is 4-1, with Supervisor Durr voting nay. Next item then is an appointment by the chairman of the Plan Commission for the remainder of Bob Stigler's 3-year term, which ends next year, April 30th, as a citizen member. So this is a 1-year term. I should back up a bit. We've got a bit of a mess because, and Clerk Nicholas has helped sort this out, the Plan Commission, 5 citizen members, 3 of which serve 3-year terms, 2 of which serve a 1-year term. The 3 that are serving 3-year terms, 1 each of those should roll over every year. We've got a little bit messed up at this point in time because Commissioners Brian Webb and Bob Flanagan were appointed last year, both to a 3-year term, and theirs runs 2 years further. So we've probably got 3 years till we actually get this back into sync. So we're actually looking tonight at 3 1-year terms, which will end April 30th of 2020. So I would like to appoint Mary Cisney, CZISNY, to the Plan Commission for a term of 1 year ending April 30th, 2020. Just real quickly, Mary is a 34-year resident of the town, a 1976 graduate of Marquette University with degrees in business communications and marketing. She has worked in executive positions with 3M and other companies. She has a great deal of expertise, having had worked for Leeds Nursery since 1993, and currently works for Canvas. I'm doing basically landscaping, design projects and so forth. I think she would be an outstanding addition to the Plan Commission, so the appointment is for her for 1 year, and I would ask someone to make a motion to confirm her appointment. Anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint her.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion was made by Supervisor German, seconded by Supervisor Stigler to appoint Mary Cisney to a 1-year term to the Plan Commission ending April 30th, 2020. Any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor indicate by saying
I have
aye.
a
Hold on.
discussion, please.
Oops, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I am a little concerned with the fact that we have a number of people, some which have history and others that don't, and kind of no information about them at all now. You just presented some information about Ms. Sisney, and that was helpful. But I think it was at your request a number of years ago, when we were making other appointments, that, you know, we have some kind of resume, that we have some kind of background, perhaps a letter or something like that, and none of that was in the packet, so none of that has been available to any of the town residents who, you know, downloaded and looked at what was gonna be discussed and voted on this evening. So I just didn't understand why there was nothing included in the packet. I mean, we have her tonight, and then Mr. White, which, you know, he has a history. Certainly I know that, and others on the board probably know that, but you know, people in the town residences may or may not know that. So I just didn't understand why there wasn't more information provided in the packets.
Okay, well, I guess the alternatives are you can move to table the motion if you would like, and we can head off in that direction. Your choice.
Before we go there, Mr. Chairman, aren't these just appointments by the chair? Do you need a vote of the board to approve it?
Well, they are to be confirmed. I think that requires a vote. Am I correct on that or not?
Yes.
And that,
Mary does need Mary does need a confirmation, because it's the ending of a 3-year term, so the 3-year terms need confirmation,
The
As long as
one-year-
we're-
The one-year terms do not?
and the 1-year terms do not.
Okay.
as long as we're cleaning it up, we might as well get it right.
Yeah.
Might as well.
I learned something. I didn't understand that the 1-year terms do not require confirmation. We'll get to that in a bit. Would you, I mean, we could, well, your choice. You can either table it, support it, table it, or I guess at this point in time, we
Just
could,
go ahead and call the vote, if anybody's got any other comments.
I mean, all right, anybody else?
Yeah, I just have a hard time approving it when I have no clue who this person is. Not saying it's right or wrong, it's just, I don't know anything.
Okay, would you, I guess let me ask you this, would you, going forward, would you like any of the suggested appointees, would you like them to be present in person
I
when
think that's a
they're
good
put
idea.
forward?
I remember when Supervisor Stigler was appointed to the Plan Commission, and the requirements that were put upon him.
Yeah, let's comment on that. First time ever that a board appointee was ever asked to bring a resume.
Yeah, I
It
remember
was
that.
Renee Ramirez and myself. Renee Ramirez was deemed too qualified.
Yeah, well, at least
For
you
this
weren't,
position.
at least you weren't called too smart to be on the.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, and I don't remember anybody bringing a resume in since then, though. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think that was the only time that a resume was ever required. And I remember it was Mike Laska who requested that at that time, I believe.
I think you're right.
I mean, this isn't
Stand correct.
what we did last year, whatever. I mean, if there's a comfort zone on it, I mean, I am certainly willing to pull the motion, and we'll basically ask her to come to the next meeting.
All right, very good. I'll make a motion to table this to May 9th.
All right, I'll second the motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on. Appointment by the chairman of a plan commission member for a 1-year term. I am appointing Alan White, who should be a well-known entity to everybody in the town of Waukesha, a long-term town resident, served for a number of years on the fire department and served with distinction for many years on the plan commission. He's had a 1-year hiatus, but I would strongly recommend his appointment and ask for someone to put that into the form of a motion.
But I'm
So,
seeing this as a
yeah.
1-year term, so
Yes.
The way that I understand our code, it reads, Citizen members, 3 citizen members shall be appointed for a 3-year term by the town chairperson and confirmed by the town board. The additional citizen members, if any, shall be appointed to hold office for a 1-year term.
So your reading of that it does not require confirmation?
That's how I read it.
We just went through that, I thought that.
Well, I understand that. I want to make sure, I desire not to be argumentative. I mean, if that, everybody's comfortable with that, that does not require confirmation, that's good enough for me.
I'm always comfortable following our code.
That's refreshing.
I'm fine with that. I believe Alan White was also removed because he didn't agree with certain things.
There we go. All right, so we'll consider that done. My final appointment is for a 1-year term ending April 30th, 2020, appointment of Scott Fuller. So we'll move on now to the Weed Commissioner. Appointment made by the chairman for a 1-year term ending April 30th, 2020, and I would like to reappoint Mike Borchert. Do we have any sense about whether that needs concurrence from the town board or not?
Does not.
All right, so that's an announcement. Board of Appeals appointments, in the same vein, do any of these require concurrence by the board?
Yes, it does. Confirmation of the Board of Appeals is required. Appointment by the chairman and confirmation by the board.
Okay. This is kind of a bit messed up too because we apparently have 5 members of the Board of Appeals having their terms all expire at the end of the month here. Don't quite know how we got there, so we want to get back on a schedule of having one of these roll over each year. In order to do that, we need a 5-year appointment, a 4-year appointment, a 3-year appointment, a 2-year appointment, a 1-year appointment, and an alternate. For the 5-year appointment, I would ask you to confirm the appointment of Kathy Piala as a member of the Board of Appeals for a 5-year term ending April 30th, 2024. She is currently on the board. I'm assuming she is a known entity to many of you, so I would ask for a motion to confirm her appointment.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, been moved by Supervisor Stigler, seconded by Supervisor Radke to confirm the appointment of Kathy Piala to the Board of Appeals for a 5-year term ending April 30th, 2024. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That was unanimously passed. The appointment for the 4-year term, I would ask for your confirmation of the appointment of Tom Greenwald. He is a member of the Board of Appeals for a 4-year term ending April 30th, 2023. Do you want him to be personally present before you act on that? Or do you want to know anything about him? What's your pleasure?
I have no knowledge of who this person is, sorry.
Okay, so my question is, do you want me to tell you a little bit who he is, or do you want him to personally appear before the next meeting? Your pleasure.
We can start with hearing your syllabus of them.
All right, it'll be kind of short and sweet. He's a long-term town resident. I don't know exact amount of years, but he is retired, but for many years ran a building inspection service as a independent contractor and independent businessman. So he has a great deal of knowledge that's acquired through that process about building construction. So what would you like to do? What's your pleasure?
And he is not currently on the Board of Appeals.
He is not currently on the Board of Appeals.
I'll move the table to May 9th.
I'll second.
May I just ask, and we'll vote momentarily, is it your pleasure that he would appear in person, or what would you like on the 9th of May?
I'll leave that to Supervisor Radke.
I'd prefer he be here in person, sure.
All right. Okay. All in favor of the motion to table indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to table passes unanimously. I'm not at this point in time going to suggest an appointment for the 3-year term ending April 30th, 2022, or the 2-year term ending April 30th, 2021. I guess a question for you, I have people in mind for both of those. Do you want resumes? Do you want them to appear personally? What is your pleasure for acting upon those appointments?
I'd say follow with what we've done with the others and have them appear. That would be the easiest way.
Okay. Everybody happy with that?
At the May 9th?
Right. If they're ready to go on May 9th. Okay, then that's how we'll proceed. The appointment for the 1-year term, which ends on April 30th, 2020, my appointment for that, for which I'm seeking confirmation, would be Paul Slavich, who is currently on the Board of Appeals. Pardon me?
Paul Skolovich.
Well,
No, it's
it's Slavich, is how it's pronounced. Whatever. Paul, Scholovich. How about that? Pronounced however it suits your pleasure. I think many of you know who he is. Do we want him here in person on the 9th of May, or do you want to act on that? What is your pleasure?
I'm comfortable with acting on that.
Are you comfortable enough to make a motion?
You can make it.
Oh, come on, be sporting.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Would you like to second it or no?
Sure, I'll second.
Very good. All right, the motion's been made by Supervisor Stigler, Supervisor Radke seconding it to confirm Paul Slavich as a member of the Board of Appeals for a 1-year term ending April 30th, 2020. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So that passes unanimously.
Sorry, Kathy, he lives across the road from me for 35 years, so I know how to say his
It's
name.
funny because I've had him on the board all this time. I've been saying his name wrong. He's never corrected me.
He never will either, because he knows people can't pronounce it correctly, but
Might not have heard you.
Well, I pronounced it the way his wife pronounces it. That's good enough for me.
There you go.
Huh? No, Tony Slavich. All right, the last thing in terms of appointments is an alternate to the Board of Appeals. I'm not prepared to present that this evening, so that will go downstream to another meeting. I think we're then at the point of accounts payable, authorization of payment of the bills. One of the bills is for Rockford Milk in the amount of $28,8395, and the other for the remainder of the bills, $26,068.68. Motions would be in order. We'll take those one at a time.
I'll make a motion, we approve the Rupert Milky bill in the amount of $28.8395.
Is there a second? Come on, it's not tough, guys.
I'll second it.
All right. Motion made by Supervisor Radke, seconded by Supervisor German to approve the payment of the bill to Roykert and Melky in the amount of $2,883.95, and this will require a roll call vote.
Chairman Fisher.
Abstain.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
Supervisor German.
Aye.
Supervisor Durr.
Aye.
Supervisor Stigler.
aye.
Just a quick aside on that, and some of you know that, routinely abstain on the Roykert and Melky bills because one of my sons is employed by Rockford and Milk, and I think that's the appropriate thing to do. All right, motion to approve the payment of the remainder of the bills.
I'll make the motion, we approve the accounts payables in the amount of $26,068.68.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Radke, second by Supervisor Durr to approve the payment of the bills in the amount of $26,068.68. Roll call vote, please.
Chairman Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
Supervisor German.
Aye.
Supervisor Durr.
Aye.
Supervisor Stigler.
Aye.
Okay, and lastly, a motion to adjourn at 7:40, and thanking all of those in attendance, some 9 strong, I believe. Thank you for coming. A motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Radke, seconded by Supervisor Durr to adjourn. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.